Have you ever wondered why you can hold it all together in front of everybody else, at least, most of the time? But the second that you finally find yourself alone, your whole body just drops. Not out of relief, not peace, but like a full on collapse. And nobody's yelling at you, nobody's coming after you, but your system still feels like it's being chased. If you're brilliant on paper, well, you're brilliant anyway, but when you're not feeling brilliant and yet you still look brilliant and sound brilliant, but you're starting to feel a little burned out behind the scenes, then I've got an episode for you. Let's go.
I'm Dr. Charlie Hornes, highly anxious people pleaser turned master certified professional life coach. Learning to manage my brain was so life-changing for me that I got certified so that I could teach these incredible evidence-based practices to you. Are you ready for massive change? Let's go.
Hey friend, welcome to the Art of Managing Your Brain. I'm Dr. Charlie Hornes. I'm a doctorate-level clinically trained and certified spiritual counseling provider and a master certified thoughtwork strategist. And today is a very special episode. Today is our 50th. Yes, it's our 50th episode, and we've done 50 in less than a year, so we've done quite a few. And we're going straight into the heart of what nobody else is saying out loud. That high functioning, high achieving brilliance hides total collapse. And for some of you, the more capable you may appear, the less safe you actually are, because your nervous system has been in motion for years, not from ambition, though I know you have a lot of that, but from survival. And today we're unpacking the deer instinct. Yes, my deer herd, my circle of flight. You're the flight response that shows up as success, composure, and grace while your system is screaming to get the heck out of there. If you've ever looked at your life and thought, now, why is it that I'm the one who feels unsafe when I'm also the one who's holding it all together? Then don't go anywhere. I've got some answers for you. But before we get started, pause and take my Burnout Archetype quiz. It's fast, it's free, and it'll tell you exactly which of the survival instincts we're always talking about on this podcast, which one's running your nervous system, because we may have a little bit of all. We may think we know which one we are, but there's always one that's the default. So go to charliehornescoaching.com/quiz and discover what yours is today. So are you part of my deer herd? What about the fox skulk? Yes, if you missed it, a group of you gathered foxes is called a skulk. We've also got the lion's den. That is my fight circle. Or are you an owl, part of my freeze circle? So each one of these has its own map, its own tools, and its own burnout pattern. I'm not teaching you mindset, all right? Mindset is great if you want to get up and will yourself to go to the gym. But when you are rooted on the shore and you are facing down a category 5 burnout event, which I liken to a hurricane as a Texan, your mindset is not going to help you. You can yell mindset and affirmations and manifestations into a Cat 5 hurricane all day long, and it doesn't care. It's taking you out. That's a Cat 5 burnout level event. And I don't want you going through it. Why? Because I did. And I barely made it back. And I did. I'm never going to be the same person. I'm different, but I like it. But there's some stuff that's, I'll never be the same. And it is absolutely unnecessary and entirely preventable suffering to go through that kind of event that can literally, the potential to destroy your career, your relationships, your finances. It can wipe everything out, just like a destructive hurricane can when it hits and makes brutal landfall. That is the level of this stuff. And I don't want you to go through it. And so that's why I'm practically giving you my new ebook playbook that's coming out. But you have to take the quiz first. That shows me that you're interested. This is not for everybody. It's only for people that are actually interested in shifting their mind and rewiring their brain and learning to manage their brain and catching the things upstream, right? Before you end up downstream into what I call the estuary, which is a thing. I'm stealing the word. And that is where your ocean water and your fresh water mix together when the river is running into the ocean. And it's a very bizarre, chaotic, lots of, undercurrent, and eventually it's swept out. And if you get into that spot, that's when it really starts to get hard to change, to prevent, to avoid, to pause. We don't want that because then your thinking brain isn't working at that point, and it's very hard to help until the storm has passed. And we hope that, your structures are still standing afterward. Mine were, but it took a whole lot of work. I don't need you going through that. The reason I use these storm metaphors is because that's exactly what this is. This is a set of converging forces based on certain conditions that when they come together, they create different levels of phenomena. Your first step to burnout prevention for upstream work, right? Before you're like swept out into the current, your first step is the quiz. You got to discover what your dominant survival instinct is. And I liken these to animals because of the way that we can watch animals play out these instincts out in nature and in the wild. So we discover that. Then you grab your cheat sheet that's going to give you some pointers and immediate action right now, but nothing overwhelming, just, a one pager. And once you do that, then that's when you'll get the offer for grabbing my book early for just $9.97 because I'm not going to give it to you free, but I'm giving it to you practically free because I want you to have it. I would also love feedback. I want you to find out what your type is so we can get you started on the journey. Today we're talking about the deer herd. However, this relates to everybody. So please stick with us. There's a little bit of, something in here for all of our archetypes. So let me tell you about a woman that I have been coaching, and I'm just going to call her Sarah. On paper, Sarah, she's something. She's a powerhouse. She's like power suit, boardroom executive. She's like owns the room just by walking in. I'm in awe of her. Executive director. She's got 3 kids and the friend that everybody leans on. I don't know how she does all of this. She was the daughter everybody admired and seemed really popular. And, she told me that frustrated her once because somebody told her that it looked like her life was so easy. That was the external Sarah. And it was interesting to kind of get, peel back the onion and get to know her because that's what I'm interested in is I've said it before, as a board certified chaplain, part of my job is to know that when you say you're fine, that's the beginning of a conversation. It's not the end of a conversation. There's a lot going on inside, behind that exterior. Often it's almost the exact opposite, right? Often our insides don't match our outsides. And so her whole life, people thought her life was easy and that she had it together and was admired. And she never understood why. She never understood it. She was like, I'm a mess. But somehow, like automatically, things look differently for her outside to the world. And, she would never stop going. She was just always busy. And it's continued till today. And she's really struggling with I don't stop running. I don't stop running. I don't stop keeping myself busy. I don't stop distracting myself. She ran by overcommitting. That's what she did. She overcommitted. That's how she ran. She was overgiving. She was overdoing. And when I asked her what it would feel like if she stopped cold turkey, stopped overcommitting, stopped overdoing, stopped doing too much for everybody, she said, quote, terrifying. She said if she stopped doing all the things, even though it felt like it was starting to smash her, the pressure, the weight, the centrifugal force of all the things starting to just like converge onto her. She said, terrifying. Because for her, and for every woman that is wired and gets quiz results for deer, this is the flight circle. Okay. My deer herd. Stillness does not feel safe. It doesn't. It feels like exposure. Deers don't collapse in public. Not necessarily a skill, probably more instinct than anything else. They vanish in private because that's what running does. You run. You even ghost yourself. It's not because there's like a personality issue with you, even though many deer feel that way. It's because you were trained to stay ahead of discomfort instead of learn to tolerate discomfort to the point that, we could be talking about pain, right? Difficult situations, difficult people. And there could be some event in, your life, like all of these instincts that set this off, that taught your brain that stillness and silence and not being a moving target was safe because it wasn't for you. And so you're going to outrun it. You stay ahead of it. What does that mean? That means you're brilliant as hell. That means that your brain instinctively can see all the different potential outcomes and can stay ahead of them. Very few people can do that except for my deer flight instinct. And everyone's like, oh, that's a terrible thing. It's not a terrible thing if you know how to manage it, right? Because all of these things are actually just trying to keep you alive, which means they're good. They're good. It's not bad. It's good. First of all, stop beating yourself up over it. Stop it. It's good. Let's just shift it, right? Mind shift. It's not mindset. We're going to mind shift. What does that mean? It means we rewire your brain. That's what it means. It means we change the way you think so that it changes how you feel, which changes what you do, which changes what you get, right? Flight isn't a failure. It's survival. And today we are going to name it for what it is. Because the deer response, the flight response, it's not like indecision. It's not a negative. It's just an instinct. And it's part of your nervous system. And it's the part that whispers, if I move fast enough, nothing can catch me, especially anything that hurts, anything that will hurt me. But what happens when even motion stops working? All right, let's break down a little bit of the neurobiology of this phenomenon known as flight. So here's what's happening in the deer body. When your brain detects any kind of danger on the horizon, because as we learn on this podcast, your amygdala is always looking for danger and is overjoyed when it finds it. So it's always exaggerating as much as possible any potential danger out there. So when your brain detects it, it doesn't see a clear path to fight and win or to stop moving and hope that it goes away, like we talked about last week. If you missed it, last week we talked about the freeze circle, which is my owls, my parliament of owls, which are all incredible, and you all think something's wrong with you, and there is nothing wrong with you. You are incredible and perfect, but you are really good at stopping and kind of, blending in with the furniture, which is what I did. I would hope that I looked like a lamp, and then, Bob from accounting would keep walking. So you can't stop and blend in, freeze, and be quiet. Don't say anything so that you don't get attention drawn at you, and you can't fight off the threat. And the only option is to run. Now, that's more of the primitive idea, we do have the fourth one, my sculpt of foxes, which is the fawning, people pleasing. Obviously, it can be very hard to accommodate the ancient sort of, tribal threats that were out there, right? That's also not an option for my deer. And so what happens is your brain floods your system with the adrenaline and cortisol that we talked about, which is what happens when the instinct kicks in. This happens for all four of you. You have physiological responses. Your pupils dilate. Your digestion slows. Often that incredible book, if you've not read it, Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers. Dr. Robert Sapolsky, he talks about how in these survival instinct reactions, our body literally starts to shut down so that it can conserve as much energy as possible and divert as much energy as possible to where it's needed to fight, to flight, the oxygen and blood away from our brain and away from our digestive tract. And he even talks about how our reproductive system shuts down. And it's all diverted to the blood and oxygen to your muscles and your heartbeat racing to get the blood and oxygen to your muscles so that you can fight or flight. And it takes out the oxygen and blood in your prefrontal cortex, which is your adult thinking brain. That's why often all four of these archetypes, they can't think in the moment. They just do, right? My lions pop off and then feel guilty. I have somebody very close to me. Actually, I have a few lions. A lot of y'all are like 8 Enneagrams as well. Check me on that. I'm pretty sure I'm right. If you're a lion, you probably got an 8 wing in there at least, I would imagine. You have all of the energy diverted to that so that you can do what needs to be done to save you, which includes a whole lot of havoc wreaked on your body. And that's what that book is about, the Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers, which is such a cool title, but it's an incredible book. Your focus sharpens on escape. That's your goal. This is your sympathetic nervous system on absolute max overdrive. You move, you solve, you go. But it's not always conscious. You don't always want to do as much as you possibly can and then some. It's coded in your brain. For high functioning, high achievers, the deer response often gets rewarded, similar to the owl, because you come across outwardly because of all of the doing as put together. You're the person people say, I don't know how she does it all. She's such a saint. How do you do it all? And, you juggle 3 children and a job and a this and a that. And gosh, you're so put together. And it's possible that you are, but it's also possible that by the time you get home, you're like, you collapse. And, the laundry mountain is waiting and the dishes aren't done. If you're not doing it, nobody's doing it. And often you don't do like lion and roar and get it done or make people get involved or do it yourself, which is how they burn out. You like want to go hide in a hole and because you're overwhelmed, because there's too much going on and you're pulled in so many directions and yet you don't know how to stop. And all of that looks to the outside like you're so put together, which is so frustrating for you because you don't feel put together. Just like my student, Sarah, she could not understand why people thought she like had it all together because that's not how she felt. That's not for her what she saw in herself. And so with deer, there's this huge disconnect, right? Because the running today is not running away from the bear who's going to eat you. The running today is overworking, overfunctioning, right? Not in a way that pleases people. That's different because that's a whole different archetype. If you stop, your body believes it equates to death. It's that dangerous. Silence, stopping, because then the pain will catch up with you and then you won't be staying ahead of it. So you're always, you know, going from one to the next, to the next, to the next, and full plate and all of that. So you're always quote unquote on top of it, seemingly. But what other people don't see is the cost this has on you, that your body only knows forward motion, forward trajectory. The rest feels like risk. It does to your nervous system. The slowdown feels like risk. The staying around and not moving on. I know somebody who's a deer friend, not student. So I have never done an official archetype diagnosis. However, we were recently out at a camping trip and I was able to sit down with her for the first time. And I've known her for years and actually learn about her and ask her questions and ask her about her life and her life story. And I heard things about her I had no idea about. I had no idea. She was divorced. I didn't even know that. You know why? Because she never stops. When we're at functions, and she loves to host, she's always just like constantly doing, cleaning, picking up this, that, and the other. And there's plenty of people to do it. There's caterers there and stuff. Like she doesn't have to do all this stuff. I've never been able to sit down and have a conversation with her. And I mean, we're in like the same circles, so we see each other all the time. And I try, but I'll get like one or two questions in and then she's got to go and she's got to go do stuff. And it's the most interesting thing. I didn't get to tell her any of this because she doesn't stop long enough for me to talk to her. I'm like, hey, I can really help you, but hey, did you know that you're a deer? Hey, would you like to take a quiz? No, she won't stop. The stillness feels like threat. And over time, the neurochemical cocktail of cortisol, norepinephrine, and this hypervigilance starts to wear down your system. Like, people that often are doing certain physical activity way too much start to like wear down their joints, right? And start to have significant bone problems. You don't rest. And when you get a chance, you just collapse. There's no resting. You don't stop, but then you vanish. Yeah, that's the cost of this kind of brilliance because you are brilliant. All four archetypes have their own unique brilliance. It's amazing to watch. Now that I'm on the other side of it, right? Now that I'm like in belly laugh land where, everybody's nonsense and ridiculous, mean comments make me laugh instead of, hide under the desk like, the stories that I tell. I can see your brilliance. I see it for what it is. It's like I've, taken the red pill at the Matrix and I see the whole system for what it is now. That's the aerial view that I teach, that 30,000 foot view. I see all of you now from that 30,000 foot view. I see you and you're brilliant and your brain is just trying to save you. And there's nothing wrong with you, right? But often the cost of this kind of brilliance, when brilliance is just burnout wearing a sweater. All right, we're going to get into something called the flight code. And this is what works with my storm system survival strategy. Yes, I got the alliteration right. I love it. If you've been watching me since the beginning, you know me and my obsession with alliteration. So let's map this into my storm collapse curve. So if you aren't familiar with that, let's go over it real quickly. So it's an acronym. So the S is the systemic pressure, right? So one of the converging forces that creates this Cat 5 potential burnout level event is the systemic pressure, which is part of what's needed to create a perfect storm. Systemic pressure, you learn this early, that stillness equals laziness. So this is external forces that tell you certain things that create these converging forces. So for you, external forces are telling you rest is lazy, right? Maybe you were raised in that kind of family systems, that action equals worth. Your self-worth is attached to your level of action. That urgency is valuable. None of that is helpful. Look at that again. Listen to that again. Stillness is laziness, so you don't rest. Action equals worth, so you don't stop pushing yourself to the limit. And urgency equals your value. So that means that you're like always in high levels of pressure because you are looking for the urgency, because you were taught the level of urgency is tied to your level of self-worth. Those three things are exhausting and are going to take you out. Deer have one of the highest capabilities of, the closest to Cat 5 plus burnout level events. And that's because of the level of pressure that is within this coming storm of burnout for you. Okay, tactical overfunctioning. What's that? You became the fixer. You're the one who gets it done. And it's now, this is not like the lion. The lion believes, and that's our fight circle, right? Fight Club. And that's our fight circle. The lion gets everything done, not because of needing to stay busy to equal their self-worth, like we just talked about. They do it because nobody else will do it and they need it to get done. And they feel like if they don't do it, nobody's going to do it. And so that's how they burn out, right? They're overfunctioning in that way. You're tactically overfunctioning because you're fixing. You're the one who gets it done. Why? Because you can't stop and you have to get it done. Like, it keeps you busy. So one project after the next, equivalent to running. You're the one who runs faster when everybody else is freezing or they're fighting or they're accommodating. You absorb responsibility for everybody else's emotions. You're the emotional paramedic, but nobody else sees the damage that it does to you because you're so busy fixing everybody else. And you're not doing it like fixing, right? Like, we hear that it was such a negative connotation. I'm not talking about that. I'm saying you keep yourself busy on this level of busyness, right? Urgency, lack of rest, because it somehow equates to safety and self-value and self-worth for you. So you are always jumping in whenever there's those cracks that something has to get done. And so you're like, next, 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 me, I'm volunteering or whatever. And this is going to translate different in your life, because what's also interesting about using this metaphor for weather and the perfect storm concept is that, when you're watching the Weather Channel and they have that, that funnel thing that, shows you all the different potential trajectories of a storm when it's further out into the water. If you've ever seen this, I don't know if you live inland, you may not have experience with this, but it's something you can look at. And these are called spaghetti models, right? Because it's like all these little pieces of pasta that are, lined up against each other, and it could go this way or that way or this way or that way. So that's the cone of uncertainty, because these things are moving, they're living, they're breathing, right? The water's warm, but then the current comes, but then the wind, and there's all these pieces. And, we've broken them down into 5 converging forces, but they're always moving and changing. They're living and breathing. So you can't assume it's going to be 100% a thing, but you can create a cone of uncertainty where it's going to go this way or that way. And all the people in this cone need to go ahead and prepare, right? So we can forecast based on certain conditions and certain converging forces a potential outcome. And by the time you have overfunctioned within what you think is the purpose or was the purpose, now it's almost like all you're left with is resentment because of so much overfunctioning in the thing that you initially loved. So you start asking, why am I even doing this? What am I doing this for? You've forgotten the meaning and purpose of what it is that you're doing that's causing the struggle. I'm always going to argue that the kryptonite to burnout is purpose, because if we love what we do, even if we don't like it sometimes, if we feel like we're providing value to the world, if we are contributing to society in some way, some purpose, whatever that is for you, and that's for you to decide, we can be busy and exhausted and go through seasons of really leaning in and working hard. But then we have to rest. And, our deer don't like to rest. And then we lose our purpose. If we have a sense of purpose and it's not beat out of us, right? Because we're over functioning or because we're never receiving the approval that we just need to know that we're doing an okay job for like whatever job it is that we're hired to do, you lose your purpose. And then you cannot function in high pressure and high capacity situations. And this is very downstream, right? If we're talking about the upstream, downstream, estuary, hurricane, right? There's like 4 stages. And then there's like land where you're totally safe. Run away. You're not taking the rest and you're not getting the rest. You're not taking it because you're running to stay ahead of the pain, right? And you're not getting the rest because everybody thinks that you have a way higher capacity than you do. And this is brilliance. Again, this is your brilliant survival mechanism, keeping you ahead of the storm. However, what you're doing, right? It thinks it's running from the storm. What you're actually doing is like floating down the river downstream towards the estuary into the actual gulf, into the danger. That's what you're doing. You're drifting down. Some are going fast, some, with rapids or whatever. And some are just kind of like ghosting themselves down the river. And the problem is that you will come straight face first into a hurricane that's coming for you directly because you're in its cone of uncertainty. And the more you do this, the more certain the cone becomes, right? It's a moving, breathing, living system. And as we get closer and closer to a crisis of meaning, right? Meaning crisis, the M of the storm, the less and less likely it is that we can prevent it because we are drifting closer and closer and closer to landfall. And this is especially complicated for deer because the whole point is that you're running from it, right? That's what your brain thinks you're doing. This is one more thing to put on the list of what Charlie teaches that is entirely counterintuitive. The more you run, the closer you get. That's what it is. That's the counterintuitive piece of deer. And all of these have one. That just doesn't make any sense. And the reason it doesn't make any sense is that you are running outdated software. You are coding outdated, HTML blocks or whatever. And we just have to update it. We have to upgrade you. And the further you drift downstream, the less likely we can intervene, the less likely we can prevent entirely or lessen the blow of the coconut to the face, right? And that makes no sense because you're the one who should be up at the, higher ground first. And yet you're the closest, drifting probably the fastest to the storm. And when it hits, especially for my flight circle. This is too urgent and too important to try to convince you with fluffy whatever groups and stuff. If you need this, you need this. If this sounds like something that you relate to, then it's for you. And when we're talking about preventing, it means you do it now. You don't do it when you're in burnout, when you've passed that 4th stage of rupture into that threshold transgression, because then you will be tossed into that crisis of purpose and meaning. And you don't want to go there. I've been there. And I am a minister who had a crisis of purpose. Resolved now, but wasn't at the time. Now it's all good. So the point is that you can choose stillness without fear. You can recalibrate your brain with this work. And I can show you how. You just need a new rule right now. Stillness isn't punishment. Stillness isn't going to cause the world to collapse. What it actually is you taking the rest and the stillness that you need rather than running so far away from something that you just come full circle and get smashed right in the face with it. And that's what's happening. So what this is power. And so we start the rewire. So what is that strategy for deer specifically? So there's 3 really quick moves to exit this sort of like flight loop of running. So to interrupt motion with ritual is helpful. Anchoring yourself with a simple ritual. Start there, one step. For example, start your day without urgency, but with ritual. I've got some in the morning that I do. One of them is, I have to do things in order or I won't do them. So I brush my teeth and then I take my vitamins and medicine. Because if I don't do it immediately and I'm ADHD, I won't take them all day. And, nobody wants that. You have to have a ritual. Number 1, don't open your phone first thing. Don't do it. That is the fastest way to start off your day with urgency. You need to start your day with some normal ritual. Brushing your hair, and this isn't fluffy stuff. I mean, like legit, just create a ritual. I don't care what it is. If it's a bubble bath and it brings you joy, it's perfect, right? If you're just doing the bubble bath because somebody told you to, because it was supposed to like be self-care bullshit, don't do that. It has to actually fill that space of meaning and purpose, right? You know when something brings you joy. You know when something is life-giving to you. I know we joke all day long about like scented candles and bubble baths, whatever. I love vanilla candles. I will sit and sniff a vanilla candle and feel very calm. And it's a wonderful ritual. That works for me. Other people may see that as, mindset bullshit fluff. Lighting candles. Oh, lighting candles. Okay, fine. But maybe you like bubble baths. Like, it's not about the thing. It's about the ritual and the level of life-giving purpose that it provides for your life. Some people do the breathing techniques. Great. Box breathing in and out for 60 seconds. It's not going to help you in the midst of a storm. Okay. If it doesn't bring you life-giving energy to your meaning and purpose. And only you get to decide that. Nobody gets to tell you that. Nobody gets to tell you. Nobody's going to tell me that lighting my vanilla candles and surrounding myself with that smell is fluffy nonsense mindset bullshit. Because for me, it's not. It's not. It brings me life-giving joy. So reaching for your phone device, not a good plan. But speaking of phones, if you need some really cool parental controls for devices, go check out my Bark partner link. I cannot tell you how cool Bark is, by the way. I've been with them for 5 years and I'm like, wait, why am I not telling people about this? Because it's something I absolutely love and every parent needs to have it, right? Oh, charliehornetscoaching.com/bark. And you can find out more and say it out loud. My value isn't measured by my motion. Okay, that's not true. It's a lie. It's a lie. You learned it somewhere and we need to unlearn it. What does that mean? It means that you wired literal neurons together to teach your brain to believe and follow the neural pathway that they get a dopamine hit if they go that direction. And that direction is measured in movement, equaling your self-worth and your value. It's not true. We're going to rewire it that way. Literally rewiring your brain. That's what we're doing. That's what all this stuff that I have is teaching you. That's the goal. That's the how-to, right? So I want you to write this down. That's one step to start to rewire. Repeat it. Interrupt the autopilot that equates your busyness with belonging, with self-worth. The reason you don't feel belonging and self-worth is because you've convinced yourself that busyness is what gives it to you. And that's not where you get self-worth from. That's why you don't have it if you are looking for it. Schedule nothing and keep it. That's a ritual. Block the time. Block it. And if somebody wants to use your block time, here's your trick. You just tell them you're tied up. Don't tell them what you're doing because it's none of their business. Because the minute You tell somebody what it is that you're doing so that you can't do what they want you to do. And what they want you to do for them is more important than what you're doing. They're going to start arguing with you no matter what and convincing you that what you want to do, like nothing, is less important than what they want you to do. So you are just tied up. That's it. Yeah, I'm tied up. And you are. And it may be with a bubble bath because that's self-care, right? Again, if we don't know how to do self-care, then it goes in the trash with all the other, fluffy mindset bullshit, whatever words. It has to have intention and purpose. Again, purpose, meaning. If we don't have that, if we're talking about superficial, shallow stuff, then it's not going to help. Let your body sit in the safety, not the strategy, right? You're not running from anything now. What you're doing is you're identifying the counterintuitiveness of the more you run, the closer you get to the catastrophe, to the collapse. So the truth is that when you stop the running, the closer you get to safety. I know so much of it doesn't make sense, and yet it's so true. All right. If you want to know more about yourself and go to the quiz, charliehornescoaching.com/quiz, find out your archetype. That will get you your cheat sheet, and that will also unlock your prevention playbook. As of this recording, the beta copy's up. Anyone who gets that now will get the updated one. So don't worry about that. But that will secure the spot for you so I know to send it to you when it's ready, which won't be very long. And you can also get on the wait list for my Burnout Equation Masterclass, and that's dropping soon. You can start that whole process. First step is just go and take the quiz, and you'll get everything there. So charliehornescoaching.com/quiz. So dear people, my dear people, my overachievers, you have carried so much. You carry so much, and you do it with brilliance. You do it with elegance and grace, like all of the archetypes in their own ways, right? But you do this with motion. You don't need to keep running to be safe. That's what's happening. You probably don't even know. That's what's happening. You don't need to keep running to be safe. Why? Because when you're doing this type of running and ghosting and collapsing and the cycle over and over and over again, you're just running towards the storm. That's all you're doing. You're ensuring the forces will converge as acutely as possible. You are assuring that the conditions will be as terrible as possible to create the most perfect of perfect storms. And you are ensuring that that storm will hit you directly in the face. That's what you're doing. You don't need to keep running to be safe because it's not safety. And safety is not found in the running. It's the resting. It's the blocking of time, identifying it as nothing and keeping it. And you don't need to pretend that you have this huge level of capacity, that self-worth and feelings of acceptance. And you also, that's the internal, right? That's the internal pressure pushing out. You also don't need to be told from the external forces pushing in that you need to do this crap to be worthy or to get approval. And anybody who's doing any of that kind of bizarre, passive aggressive, sticky gray, you don't quite know, you can't get your finger on it, that's dysfunction. That's why you can't get your finger on it. And that's what's going to be those external social and systemic forces that are pushing within and without, creating the pressure. You get a rest. You get to just be. And stillness isn't surrender. It's sovereignty. It is taking your own power back, your own level of capacity, deciding what is and is not going to work for you. And that's the next move. All right. So if you want to get started, take the quiz and learn to read the system. That's how we outsmart the coming storm. Because, friend, if any of this relates, it's coming. It is time to prevent it. And we do that now. That's how we outsmart it. All right. Next week, we are tackling the secret grief behind your nice girl mask. That's right. Why fawning is the most praised survival response, but also the most punishing. That's right, friend. We are talking about you, my fawning circle, my skulk of foxes. So you don't want to miss next week. All right. Take care, and I'll see you then.